Hi, welcome to Coffee and Closers. I'm Nikolai Bedore, and I want to personally invite you to join me and one of today's top performing sales stars for a cup of coffee and authentic conversation. And our collective goal is that you will walk away with tangible knowledge that you can apply to your sales efforts today. Are you ready? We'll grab a cup, fill it up, and let's get into another episode of Coffee and Closers.
Thank you very much. And thank you guys for trudging through the snow. This is Coffee and Closers. Put your hands together for being here. All right. Who's been here before? Thank you. You are the reason why we keep doing this. So keep coming back. We'll keep doing these things. Whose first time is it? Welcome. You probably already know this, but you are in for a treat today. We're going to make it worth your while. All right? So this is how it's going to go. For the first 30 minutes, I'm going to ask today's... I can't even make eye contact with her. She's so important. Today's amazing guest, a handful of questions, and we're going to record this. And we distribute it on iTunes, on our podcast, on a bunch of other platforms I don't use, as well as on YouTube for our video segment. You can also get that at bedorebusinessgroup.com. All right? So after that, here's the fun part. We're going to open it up to you guys. It's now your show. So you have a half an hour to ask anything that you want to know about sales, marketing, how to take a company public. Well, actually, you can today. How to grow and scale, whatever you want. This is a rare opportunity, guys. This is a very busy individual who's done amazing things, and she loves this art and science that we call sales so much that she's giving her time to be here with you, so take advantage of it. Think of questions and ask them. We only have 30 minutes to do so, all right? Networking afterwards, free coffee, so on and so forth. But before we get into it, I want to thank some people that make this possible. All right. First and foremost, I want to thank Allison. I want to thank Rich. I want to thank Susie. I want to thank other Rich, who's in LA, on our team. They're on the Bedore Business Group team, and they make every day a joy. So thank you to them. If you are watching this at home or listening to it at home, that is not magic. It's not Josh Feedy either. It's Jensen Studios. They are a production partner. We love them. They make us look great. So put your hands together for them. If you're listening to this at home, you probably heard a song. That's by a local legend, musician, Alex Rossi. Pick up his music. We are huge favorites. We want to thank WeWork for doing everything they do to make this look effortless and easy. Thank you, guys. And we want to thank Driven Coffee. Because of the snow and because of the blow, they said, you know what, put your wallets away. Coffee's on us. So help yourself to as much cold press as you possibly can stomach. Just don't get sick. And last but not least, if you guys watched the last episode or were here, we made a promise to you in 2019. So we've had a lot of momentum we've built through Coffee and Closers, and we don't want it to stop. So what we thought would be valuable, and the feedback we got was, hey, you know what would be great? What if we could take it further? Could you help us make authentic conversations with those that truly celebrate salespeople, those that truly enable salespeople via marketing, via tools, companies that build award-winning revenue growth cultures, but truly celebrate their salespeople and want them to do great. Places like Jamf. You guys familiar with Jamf? Go ahead and turn around. There's Jamf. All right. There's Tyler. There's Patrick. Go see them afterwards. Here's what's amazing. Their technology kicks ass. Fact. But what people don't realize is they have a 99% retention rate. 99% retention rate for their employees, meaning salespeople go there, they are celebrated, they get promoted, and they stay. That's amazing. If that sounds of interest, go make a connection. Speaking of that, Jeff Sorensen used to be an Oracle icon. He built a bunch of teams. They were successful. He left to go and do the same thing for companies now. So if you want to make a connection with that person, maybe you're in the market, or if you're a company that's looking to grow, Jeff Sorensen over at Red Birch Recruiting, go see him afterwards. Our marketplace is right over there. And last but not least, we're working on some really cool things at Bedore Business Group. So go see Rich. That's our guy right there. We're kind of working on some tool partnerships and some content partnerships that we're really excited. So he'll fill you in the blanks. All right. So back to the show. Who I'm about to introduce to you, I've been a fan of for a very, very long time. She is one of Minnesota's most celebrated women in business. Now, I think that, but also our publication that decides that the Minneapolis-St. Paul Business Journal has celebrated her over and over and over for her success. Why? Well, she took a company from a steel barn in the burbs to publicly traded. That was Proto Labs. Have you guys heard of 3D darling Proto Labs? It's one of the coolest stories in Minnesota. In her free time, she accelerates advises companies through Great North Labs, right, and some others. And in her free time, when she's not doing that, she's the Chief Revenue Officer of Field Nation. There is no doubts on her watch we're going to see the same exact success that she's built elsewhere. Put your hands together for this month's Coffee and Closers guest, Jackie Snider.
Hi.
You want to sit down or you want to stand? It's up to you.
Sit.
All right. Well, thank you, first of all, for braving the snow. You have had an amazing story. There's no question about that, but no one tells your story better than you. So would you mind just filling the blanks? Tell us a little bit about Jackie.
Well, sure. I think the key piece, when I was 18 years old and I was going off to college, I knew that I was going to be in sales, believe it or not. And that was in the early 80s. Don't want to date myself. But back then, people didn't really pick sales as a career, obviously. So my dad had been a business owner and just always told me, you're going to be good in sales, and it's the highest paying job, and it's the lowest paying job. It's into your control as to how much you make. So started out going into college knowing I wanted to get into sales. And then after graduating, I started out with General Electric, which was an amazing first job out of college, amazing company. But I realized I wasn't a big company gal at that point. And so throughout my journey in sales, I ended up in emerging growth companies, doing sales, sales leadership, marketing, and customer support.
All right, so you could have done anything, right? Fair to say. I mean, you're that type of person. You could have done anything. How many people are new to sales? Who's new to sales here? Okay, welcome. Seriously. Who's been doing this a little while? All right, who knows everything about sales? If your name is not Jackie, hands down. I'm kidding. So could you kind of elaborate? I mean, you could have done anything. There's a lot of paths, and it sounds like your inspiration. But what has it meant to you? Because you look at your track record. You're now advising. Can you imagine a salesperson ever giving advice to anybody back in the day?
No.
And now you're celebrated for what you've done. Could you elaborate a little bit on what sales has done for you?
You know, for me, it's really just been about, I look for what I call NCPs, naturally curious people in sales, because I think sales has this negative reputation. You know, oh, they're sly and they're going to try to sell me something I don't need. And I've always really believed that if you were curious and really wanted to understand what the customer was trying to accomplish, and if you had a solution that could address that you both win. And a lot of times you don't have the right product. So to me, it's just really, I love helping people. I love being around people. And sales has allowed me to have that win-win.
That's awesome. Successes, you've had many, but I've waited, you guys. I didn't want to hear this beforehand, so I could be, I've been waiting to hear the Proto Labs story, because it's incredible. If you guys aren't, Google it after this. It's all over the place. What Jackie was able to do there, from taking it from 32 million to 300 and some million, she did that. And I know
it was a team effort. It was not just me.
I'm just going to give all salespeople credit. You know the deal. I'm kidding. I'm well aware, and I also know that we've talked. That you had, we've in sales, especially in tech, you work with engineers, and sometimes engineers don't think the same way as salespeople do. Could you kind of describe the Proto Labs journey and how you took it? Kind of the trail to the end?
Sure. Can I ask a question? How many engineers are in the room? Okay.
All right.
One. All right.
All right.
Don't hold this against me. No. So it was really interesting because when I was working for a company called ComWorks, and I had received 3 calls from 3 different executive search firms to go to this company called Proto at the time. And I knew it was one of the fast-growing companies because I follow the Fast 50 and the Inc. 500 and all that, and those are the type of companies I'm very passionate about. And when these 3 executive search firms called, they all described the job differently, which was really interesting to me. So I had a bad day, and I finally said yes to one of them, but I said, let the CEO know that I'm not really looking for a job, but I'm just kind of curious. So, and by the way, this is through my lens. Of course, I'm a salesperson, so I'm sure my engineering executives at Proto Labs would have a different lens. But I met with the CEO, and the first question he asked me was, tell me about your marketing experience. Tell me about your direct marketing experience. And I'm like, that I don't have any. That's not really my forte. I said, I thought this was a sales leadership role that I was interviewing for. And so we kind of just looked at each other, and so I said, well, tell me about the problem you're trying to solve. And he said, and I'll take a step back. So Proto Labs had an executive team that were all PhDs, software engineers, electrical engineers, and mechanical engineers. And it was the founder's vision to never, ever, ever have to hire a salesperson. If you build it, they will come. And he built an amazing solution. So
Has anyone ever been in that situation as a salesperson?
Really? Nobody? So, so what they did was they were really great at marketing. And they were marketing to engineers, and they had engineers categorized in 3 different ways. A lead was an engineer that gave an email address to the company so I could market to them. Prospect was somebody that actually uploaded their CAD file to our website to get a quote. And a customer was somebody that actually clicked the buy button and got parts from Proto Labs. So he said, okay, so the challenge we're having is, our marketing was doing amazing and we've been growing really fast and it's kind of come to a lull. So we're looking for somebody to come in and, do some more marketing to get these leads, back up to speed and coming in the door. And I said, well, how many leads do you have? And he said, 30,000. And just how you guys looked, I think I looked like that because I wear my feelings on my sleeve. And he looked at me like, well, what? And I go, well, what are you doing with those leads? And he said, we sent them all of our literature, and when they need a prototype part, they know where to come. And
Sorry,
I
that's
love
crazy.
it. Okay. So then I said, well, how many prospects do you have? Remember, these are the ones that have uploaded and got a quote but never bought. And he said 15,000. So at that point, I just was dumbfounded. And he said, well, what would you do with those names? And I said, well, I'd call them. And he said, well, they're engineers. They don't want to talk to you. And I said, you're probably right, but I think you've got the innovators and the early adopters in this process. You're asking engineers who are skeptical by nature to take a proprietary CAD drawing and upload it to this website to get a quote and then buy and miraculously get parts. And so long story short, the discussions continued, and I did ask, tell me about your sales organization, because they had 5 salespeople. Well, what the salespeople were really customer service reps. They were people that were tracking down orders, processing payment, answering questions. So I think it was probably 7 interviews later. I said, if you need that marketer, I'm not your gal. But if you're looking for somebody to really take the leads and the prospects and turn them into customers, and I had to explain to them what an AVL was. Some customers, to even buy from you, you have to be on an approved vendor list. So there are these barriers that even if an engineer did want to buy from you, they can't. So 7 interviews later, I took the job. It was really fun.
Wow. Are you serious?
I'm serious.
All right. Well, can you tell us from that? Yes, I do. Does anyone else want to hear more of this story? All right.
Does anybody else experience this pain as a salesperson, just as far as the question if you really drive revenue or not?
Did you guys hear that? If any salesperson ever been in a situation where they've got to constantly prove their value because everyone else on the team is like, I don't know, we're the valuable you just talk a bunch and have lunches. Anyone else face that ever? Okay. Right? We can all be honest. I mean, we're in the trust nest. We're being recorded. You're not. So you could probably all raise your hands. How did you get through that?
So I'm very tenacious, and I'm like, who doesn't believe that salespeople can't contribute to revenue? Like, duh, right? And so, yeah, they didn't know what they were in for when they hired me. But anyway, so for the next 5 years, what I didn't anticipate was trying to prove that sales really does contribute to revenue. And the approach that we were taking, a couple of things, is once I figured out what the sales structure was, I did the whole hunters versus farmers, and we went to hire people, and I put the compensation plan in place. And at Proto Labs, they're very, very generous, and they have a compensation program where every employee is part of a company bonus program, which is just amazing. And I had tried to convince the CEO that when you're salespeople, they want to be rewarded for what they do. They want to go get that sale and then be paid. And there was an internal struggle with, well, the rest of the employees have to wait until their annual, end of the year to get their bonus. Why would we pay salespeople commissions? So he justified it by, going, okay, they're just getting their annual bonus earlier than the rest of the employees. And so that was... And at the last minute, he did say, let's just put him on the company bonus program. And I said, if I do that, I won't be successful because I won't attract the people I need to generate sales. And what I loved about this gentleman is even though he was very uncomfortable with stuff, he would always say to me, you know what, I disagree, but go for it and prove me wrong. And so what a great leader to work
Amen.
for. And a lot of times I was wrong, but a lot of times I proved things out. So it was a really great relationship. But through the next 5 years, I think there were situations where, again, very tenacious. Engineers don't want to talk to salespeople. You can't make an engineer buy a prototype part if they don't need one, right? Well, what I tried to educate the team on was you have to be calling a bunch of engineers, finding out when their projects are, and then timing your follow-up call to when they would need it. You can't make anybody buy something if they don't need it, right? So I ended up started to record sales phone calls because we'd get these engineers on the phone and they wouldn't shut up. Like they would just talk about their projects and how excited they were and how the parts that they needed. And so then my executive team, I would record the calls and share them, and they're like, wow, these guys, they really do talk. And they're proud of their projects, so it makes a lot of sense. But that still didn't convince them that sales contributed to revenue. I remember at one point I had a sales rep take a lead from a trade show in 2005. It's now 2008. Guy had one interaction with us at a trade show. Sales rep calls, we record the call. She says, hey, where have you been all these years? Last time we saw you was at this 2005 trade show. Have you heard of Proto Mold? We start the conversations, we hang up. Within an hour, he uploads a part, he gets a quote. Within a week, he buys. I'm like, how many of you think that that's due to the sales reps' contributions, right? I go into the executive team, and I'm like, this is proof. Like, this guy hasn't talked to us since 2005, this call-generated customer transaction. And they said, well, you can't prove that. How do you not know that he wasn't going to upload that part anyway? And so I said, you know what, you can't prove that he didn't. And then I gave up. But I did learn a lot in this process, which is, it's true. You can't prove causation with sales. It's correlation. All those calls, there was a correlating activity in quotes and then a correlating activity in revenue generated. So I learned to use the word correlate versus causate, which was a key learning for me. And then there was another one. So we would hire one rep and our sales would kind of go up, and then we'd go, okay, let's hire another one, and then the sales would kind of go up, and we kept doing that. And at one point, I pulled the founder and the CEO aside, and I said, I know how to prove sales works. And they said, well, what's that? And I said, I know with the team that I have, with where they are in their onboarding process, that I can give you 30% growth next year. Tell me to give you 40 and don't let me hire anybody. And then he went, whoa, I'm not ready to do that. And I said, well, so you do believe in sales. And so then they kind of said, let's do this. Let's hire 4 reps at a time. Let's hire a batch of them, right? So I'm like, okay. So it was the fall of 2010. We hired 4 sales reps, and we're onboarding them and training them, and I'm on my way to London. And I land, and I get an email from our COO or CTO saying, there's a bubble of orders in the system. If anybody hiccups, we're going to have a problem. If we don't have a hiccup, we should be okay. Now, keep in mind, Proto Labs sells speed. So we have customers paying 100 or 200% premium.
Isn't speed illegal to sell?
It's not the drug speed.
Oh. Clarification for our Canadian friends.
But yes, that is illegal. So, people are relying on us to, if they need their part, typically it would take, I think, 4 months to get a plastic injection molded part. It would take us 10 days, but people could buy up to a 5, a 3, or a 1-day turn. So fulfilling those commitments are, and again, engineers are skeptical. That's why I kept going, marketing isn't going to get to
That's an
these
interesting thing, not to
customers.
break you on your track, but that's a kind of a cool thing that you can upgrade and get faster.
Oh, yeah. And it's amazing. It helps engineers get their products to market more quickly.
Yeah.
It's a really cool company. So I land and I say, that's not a bubble of orders in the system. I hired 4 people in September. I have 2 fully productive people, and in 3 more months, I'm going to have 4 fully productive people. This isn't going to stop. And I kind of got Well, guess what happened? We got hit, and the wave just kept hitting with orders every day, and it took us 12 weeks to order 2 truckloads of CNC machining mills, and then we had to get the mills commissioned, and then we had to hire people to run the mills, and in the meantime, the orders kept coming in, and every day we would sit down and reprioritize which orders we had to get out the door, which ones we had to call customers and say, we're so sorry, we're not going to charge you your quick turn fee. but you're not going to get your parts. And, you know, the customers, for the most part, were just really, really happy to be a part of a growing company. But after that point, you guys, our CTO was always one step ahead of me with getting buildings and equipment and people, and would always say, I need more orders, Jackie. So, yeah. So it was a key learning moment for us.
That's an amazing story. Put your hands together for that one. That's, well, because we always want to talk about successes and failures, and I'm going to ask you that in a second. But isn't that, when you win over that team, so in my sales career, it was always the solutions engineers that would be like, oh, here we go again. You know, and I think we've talked about that story where one of them ended up getting into the field and 3 months later said, I will never doubt your abilities ever again. But it's really, it's such a climb to get there, to earn that respect of these smart folks, and we can level the playing field. The positive damage that can be done together is amazing. That's great. So this is probably a head scratcher for you because you're such a success. But I'm sure there's way back when.
I am not, you guys. Don't listen to him.
I'm a ham. I'm sorry. We always like to celebrate failure on the show because everyone has failed. Anybody? Yeah. We've all failed, but it's those failures, those crown jewels, I like to call them, of not the success, because we can't all appreciate someone's success because it differs from our metrics. But we can all celebrate failure. So I would love to hear about a failure that maybe you took on, maybe you were overwhelmed, it didn't work out, and what you took away from that experience.
You know, it's interesting because when you talked about wanting to talk about failures, I've never really looked at failures as failures. And I sincerely mean that. I always looked at it as learning moments, you know. And what I find is people don't fail enough because every time I failed, I learned. And so to me, you make mistakes and you learn from them. A couple in my career, you know, obviously compensation plans, if you've ever been a part of, I've been the benefit of a really bad compensation plan where it's paid off of activity, so I knew I will never do that as a sales leader. But, you know, compensation plans have unintended consequences. And so I've made mistakes before where you've rolled out compensation plans thinking, okay, you know, this plan's going to drive the right behavior, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, how did that happen? And you need to change it. And I think for me, one of the first time that happened to me, I waited too long to change the plan, which caused morale issues on one of the sales organizations I had. And the good news is when I made the change, they applauded it. So I think the point here is when you know you fail, don't fail. When you make a mistake, just make sure you fix it fast as soon as you know that you make that mistake. And then just a personal note, and this is more right out of college, I was told by somebody who I really respected that I would never be successful in sales because I was too nice. And had to think about that, and I thought, okay, you know, whatever. And then 10 years after I graduated from college, a leader who I very much respected, I was his VP of sales at the time. We had sold our company to Hallmark. And I was asking him for career advice, and he just said, you know, you should go back into being an individual contributor because you'll never be a good leader, a sales leader, because you're too nice. And so, you know, I had to do a lot of soul searching with that. And I thought, you know, this is what makes me happy. I love helping people be successful. I love removing barriers. I get joy out of having other people be successful. So I decided to go down that path. But it really, to me, you can be nice as long as you have clearly defined expectations for people and you hold them accountable to those expectations and you do everything in your power to help them be successful. So that was just an interesting thing I wanted to share. Just follow your heart, and if you know you're really passionate about something, regardless what others say, go for it.
That's amazing. Well, and if anyone tuned in last month, we had a lesser superstar, Josh Feedy. I'm just kidding. He's right there. I can't help myself. I got the mic. But you know, something that we shared, you know, when we were talking about failures is it's becoming a pattern a little bit whenever we ask us. It seems to be I always ask situational, but it tends to be a person or a thing or a time where someone said to a motivated person, let's say a salesperson or any motivated person, you can't do this. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You're not talented enough. You're too nice, whatever, right? So let's throw that back in that person's face. Let's talk about your crown jewel on the success front. You've had a lot of successes, but is there something that maybe we would never see? Maybe you see Proto Labs as like, that was cool. I sold my company to Hallmark. That was cool. Is there anything else on the success front that maybe helped define you on the opposite way?
You know, I'm going to go back to Proto Labs, but it wasn't about taking the company public or growing the revenues. Part of what I really enjoyed was, I think by the time I left there, we had 100 sales reps in Maple Plain, Minnesota, which if anybody knows where that is, it's far west, and recruiting was really, really difficult. But as we were growing really fast, we had hired, there was a lot of promotions and career progressions internally, and to me the most rewarding was seeing people come in as salespeople and then end up being solutions engineers or sales managers or even directors of sales. That to me is where I felt I contributed to somebody else and am most proud of.
That's amazing. I know we don't have a ton of time left, but I got a couple questions. How many founders do we have here? Oh, wow. Perfect. Solopreneurs? Okay. So if you don't mind, we've talked about compensation, right? We've talked about, motivating people starting here and up here. For those founders maybe that are just getting started and saying, I want to build the biggest insert thing here. I want to be the next insert thing here. Any advice that you could give on how to successfully scale a team, including hiring maybe methods, maybe comp packages, so on and so forth?
Yeah, I think for me, and I do some advising for mostly emerging growth companies, and one of the things that I see over and over is when you're growing really fast, people get into a very reactive mode, and they answer the calls and they take what's coming at them versus really going, what do I need to be doing proactively to drive the growth of this business, and what can I let go of that's reactive that really doesn't help me drive the growth? So one thing is to really focus on how do I get people proactively doing the things I need them to do. The second thing that ties into that is hiring the right people. A thing that I've learned from working at, like GE and Control Data and some larger companies, Hallmark, versus really fast emerging growth, cool technology companies is, and I'm going to stereotype, there's a different persona. When you hire people that are at the emerging growth companies, it seems to me like they're high energy, they want to be generalists, they'll do what you need them to do, they want to roll up their sleeves, they don't care about the title, they just want to be a part of a team and collaborate and make a difference. And as you get into bigger companies, stereotyping, I find people are more about, I want stability, I want to come in and do the job that I'm doing, I really care about my title and how many direct reports I have. And so to me, it's really looking for that entrepreneurial employee. And I hire all the time people, I find jobs for people if they're the right people versus having this job description and totally making them fit into it. And then my last piece of advice is really, in addition to focusing people, really creating high-performing teams, which is clearly define what the expectations are, have measurements in place to help people understand if they're actually trending towards what's expected or not, and then give them the tools to be successful, and if not, you need to deal with it, which is probably the hardest part.
Okay. Dealing with it as in, yep. Yeah. Which is, if anyone's ever had to do that. Nobody's going to say it?
Hatchet.
Firing, which is my least favorite thing ever. Okay. So as far as maybe we can go take a step, because I'm just curious on this. The bigger and the smaller, you give your time graciously to startups, specifically startups. Why do you do it? And what's kind of when you walk in, is there like a method? Basically, there's a lot of advisors in any sort of growth fund or whatever, but you, I'm guessing, are the marketing and sales specialist, right? Yeah. So when you walk in, what is kind of what can they expect to get, and what can you expect in your own mind to kind of
it's interesting because to me, it's never been about the industry. I've never been in the same industry twice. I mean, if you understand sales and sales leaderships and structures and strategies and compensation, that's what I feel like I bring to the table. So to me, every business is different, and it's just understanding where are they at right now, what are the problems that they're facing, and then just taking my knowledge and experiences and helping apply whatever that is to that particular situation. So it's really hard, but a lot of it ties back to that being proactive, having high-performing teams. Another thing is you'll see in emerging growth companies, they'll have one person doing like 5 different things, and there's a point where you get big enough where you need to go, okay, what is this person's highest value, and how do I get them only doing that and take all this other stuff and create a new job or have somebody else do that? I don't know if I'm making sense, but it's just really helping them kind of, refine their strategies to get ready to scale.
Lucky to have you.
Oh, you're sweet.
I'm serious. But as far as high growth teams, something that we talk about in some, whenever I have someone like you, I have to ask it, is helping the good to great. You know, we've all seen the 90-10. I mean, people say 80-20, but let's be honest, there's about, 10% that are carrying 90%, but then there's those people right in the middle. Do you believe, A, that they have the ability to go from good to great? Meaning, can they be coached? And if so, how?
I do. And I can name one company that I'm advising right now, and they've been super, super impressive. They're motivated. They have super bright people. They want to get stuff done, and they listen and they execute. If you don't have somebody who's willing to listen and execute, you're not going to be successful. But I don't know if I'm making sense. But especially when you're advising, to me, I hate advising companies if you just say, oh, here's what you need to do, and then they don't do it. It's like, that's worth none of our time, right? But if you have companies that are really going to take it and embrace it and implement what works for them, yeah, I do think they have the opportunity to go from good to great.
So being teachable. Who's willing to be teachable here? Me too.
Can I say who you are? Merchology is one of the companies I advise, and they're right here. They're fantastic.
So these are the prime example with you, because I could see you kind of lighten up saying, because we all have the non-coachable clients, but then we have the coachable ones, and they tend to win more.
I mean, if I can just
humility,
go
who
on,
knew?
I met them, I think, in May or so, and Andrew, who's sitting here, said, okay, I want all this done by July. And I'm like, man, it took me years at Proto Labs to do that. Good luck. And he did it. So, but he didn't have engineers pushing him on. But yeah, so this company's been very impressive to work with.
Very.
No, you're sweet.
Well, I get one more, and then I know you guys I can see some hands every time I stop talking. People start shooting up their hands. I would love to just ask, from a founder's perspective, from a new founder to someone new to sales, if you're sitting out here, if this was back then and you're sitting out there, what would you hope to hear? What would you need to hear from someone in your position?
One thing that I've learned, I'm 54, so I've had 30-some years of figuring this out. I've always done what I loved. And it's never been about the money. It's never been about the title. It's really been working for companies that have a solid solution, working for a high-integrity leadership team, and really being passionate about what you're doing. Now, that doesn't mean that I didn't have Sundays where I'm like, oh, boy, I got to go to work on Monday. But as soon as I had that for about 3 weeks, I'm like, it's time for me to move on, right? And I've never regretted any of my changes. So to me, do what you love and get joy out of. And if you're not being fulfilled, really just look at yourself and decide why you're doing what you're doing and think about what you should be doing.
And that's a risky proposition, but there was a theme that's been running this year too, is life is too short. If you're not having fun.
Yeah, and not to get all melancholy, but the CEO that had hired me at Proto Labs passed away at, I think, age 56. So we brought the company public. He had a wild ride. He was an amazing leader. And he's gone now. And so to me, that just validates, do what you love, have fun.
Well, the fact that you have given us this much time, I just want to thank you so much. It is a true honor to have you on this show. So put your hands together for Jackie.
So what do we think? What'd you learn? Well, if you like that, check out coffeeclosers.com for upcoming episodes, recordings, and more. And don't forget to check out our sponsors. Each one has been hand-selected. They are best in class. Until next time, we'll see you at the next Coffee and Closers. Cheers.
Say live, come on live a life we love. Gotta live, I said live a life we love.